auditors, we have something on audit checklist, procurement audit checklist, which may help you, which helps you in fact. So let's start with some definition on this. What is procurement first? And we will give you some standard definitions, like one from United Nations Commissions on International Trade Law, which says that procurement means the acquisition of goods, construction or services by a procuring authority. Very simple, but very, very meaningful. It's an acquisition, means you acquire something, which can be goods or construction, we often call it works, or services by a procuring authority, an authority which wants all these things. Similarly, United Nations also has given a definition that procurement functions include one more thing. I'll be reading out also, and during my reading out, I'll go on explaining the things. So it is this is how online classes are happening everywhere. Otherwise, in offline classes, things are little different. Anyway, procurement functions include all actions necessary for the acquisition by purchase or lease of property, including products and real property, and of services, including work, the same as United Nations Commission on International Trade and Law. Then India has a public procurement bill pending since 2012 and amended partly in 2015, but it could not become a law because it could not be passed by the parliament. Several times it was put up for debate, but it couldn't take place. So this public procurement bill of 2012 defines procurement or public procurement. It means acquisition. Again, acquisition, please mind it. The word is acquisition, means you are getting something, getting done, either works or service or maybe some material. So acquisition by purchase or lease or license or otherwise of goods, works or services, or any combination, including award of public-private partnership projects by a procuring entity, whether directly or through an agency with which a contract for procurement services is entered into, but does not include any acquisition of good works or services without consideration. In fact, this is a very legal kind of a thing. But what you have to understand, and maybe many of you must have gone for auditing and must have audited procurement, purchase department, stores department. So this is very general, yet some of the key factors are that the procuring authority has to be there. He has to acquire something, and there has to be a supplier or service provider ready to supply or give that service to that fellow. All these things, when done in a very transparent manner and by a public authority, it becomes, to a great extent, we can call it public procurement. We'll come to it little later also. Now, before that, yes, let's first say what is public procurement then. Till now, we were discussing procurement. Now, public procurement. The procurement is not done by only one or two agencies. Procurement is something which is done by almost everybody. We in our personal life also procure so many things. We go to the market and fetch so many things, vegetables and clothes and whatnot. So procurement is a word which is very commonly understood everywhere in the world. But technically, when we define public procurement, then first of all, it means that for procuring whatever money you are spending, that money belongs to the public. So public procurement can be defined as the procurement of goods, works and services by all government ministries, departments, agencies, statutory corporations and public sector undertakings in the center and the states. Besides them are municipal corporations and other local bodies, and even by private public sector undertakings providing public services on a monopoly basis. And then something like award of public-private partnership projects. So, in fact, it very comprehensively brings out two things: that procurement of goods, works and services, and second, this is procured by necessarily government ministries or wherever government has a stake, because this money which is being spent for procurement is the money of the public. We often call it कि हम लोग तो गरीब जनता का पैसा खर्च कर रहे हैं. I have worked all through in the department purchase and store sale materials management. So for 35 or 36 years that I spent there in Steel Authority, we used to discuss only this कि भाई ठीक से खर्च करो, ये जनता का पैसा है. Every rupee that we spent, this rupee has to be justified for purchasing. So public procurement means that. And the size of the public expenditure is so high, it is becoming bigger day by the day. As the economy grows, the size of public expenditure becomes larger, and procurement is one of the most important activities in governmental operations. Therefore, public procurement can influence many areas and change the way of doing things in the nation. That is the power of public procurement. So I think public procurement is more or less clear. The procurement is done by a public authority. Next, when public authority does the procurement, when government does the procurement, then what the procurement agency has to ensure? It has to ensure that there is an economy. Whatever you spend, I just said कि हम लोग बात किया करते थे, if I spend 1 rupee, I am spending the money of a common man. So spend that 1 rupee to get the maximum value of it. It should not be wasted. So getting the right thing at the right price. Right price is very important. Then second is efficiency. If we are procuring something and if the item is not coming in time, then what is the use of it? Things get delayed. You are auditors. You must have audited projects where you might have seen that the projects got delayed for years together. If the projects are getting delayed years together, then obviously the cost will go high. There has to be some more, additional fund required for financing the project just because it has been delayed, and in the market the items, the value of the item, the price of the item has gone up. The contractor is not willing to work on the same price. So therefore the efficiency has to be there. Arrival of item in the right place at the right time. Right time is very important. That gives the money for value. Otherwise, the value changes depending upon time as the time passes. Most important is the third point here, which you might be seeing, transparency. Transparency means what? Letting everyone know not only the facts and figures of procurement, but also the mechanisms and procedures followed. See, transparency clearly means that if you are doing procurement, then at no stage of this procuring procedure or step, whatever you call it, there can be any hiding kind of a thing. Everything has to be made public whenever required. Things are to be as transparent as possible. And for that, many procedures are made, amended, and discarded, and then again made, depending upon the time, depending upon the situation. Now is the era of digital procurement. You might have often heard the name of e-procurement, electronic procurement or e-procurement. What is this procurement? This is online, this is digital, so nothing can be hidden. Every stakeholder has a right to know how much money has been spent for getting what services, what works, and what materials. And you auditors are the best people who know about it, because you go and check everything. So you know that if the things are not transparent, then how you will go and audit. Next point for the public procurement authority is that equal opportunity and fairness. Means all the tenderers, the parties, the bidders, the tenders as we call them, they should be treated fairly, equally, and they must give equal opportunity. Equal opportunity means, suppose we have got tenderers as per the qualifying criteria. The qualifying criteria has to be very transparent. And mostly it comes out in the newspapers and nowadays on the website. So every person who thinks, every tenderer who thinks that he qualifies for that, he can quote, he can give a tender. And then the public authority, the procuring authority has to give him equal opportunity compared to all other tenderers and the public authority has to be very fair to him also, to everybody. That is the meaning of equal opportunity and fairness. And then, though this happens, I mean, the last point, adherence to laid down procedure, amendment, so many things. This is true with any procuring authority, whether in public or private or anywhere. When a company operates, then definitely the company has to have a procedure for everything, every process which is very regular kind of a process, and procurement is a very regular kind of a process. It's done day in, day out. So that way, every organization has a procedure, but what is very peculiar about public procurement is that most of the time this procedure comes directly from the ministries, directly from the government. And therefore, all the government departments, all those where the government has a stake, like your public sector undertakings, semi-public undertakings, so many things, joint ventures, everywhere that procedure or the basic tenets of those procedures has to be there. It has to be followed. Nowadays, you might be hearing a lot of emphasis is being made on Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. All these things are there. So from time to time, the procedure comes from the ministry, some guidelines come from the ministry, and then for a public procuring authority has to follow those changes, those amendments. This is very important, and this precisely differentiates between public and private procuring methods of agencies. In a private sector organization, this may be they may not be necessary. They are having their own procedure where they may not give much credence to Make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat. They may try to get the latest kind of a thing, the best thing from anywhere in the world. But this is not possible for a public procuring authority. We have to go by what government says, by the procedure government gives, by the amendments government makes. All these things are there, and that is why this is very important. This basically differentiates how public procurement is done compared to how private procurement is done. Now, let's also see, very broadly we have defined that public procuring authorities. Now let's see who are covered by the legislation as purchasers. I mean, these are public procuring authorities. Obviously, government and government agencies, that entities otherwise deemed to be state entities for the purpose of the Constitution. For example, this is public sector. I have worked in Steel Authority, one of the biggest public sector undertakings of India, and we were always told that you have to act as the arm of the state in every activity that you do. So entities otherwise deemed to be state entities for the purpose of the Constitution. All ministries and departments of the central and state governments, corporate entities owned or controlled by central or state governments, public authorities exercising statutory powers, autonomous bodies that are created or owned by or receive grants from the government, or entities whose services are being utilized by the entities mentioned above. Just to see in all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, it tries to cover all those areas where government has got some stake or full stake. And in those places, every procurement has to be public procurement. Means it has to adhere to what we have already seen here: economy, efficiency, transparency, equal opportunity, transparency, and adherence to laid down procedures being the most important here. So just because we discussed public procurement, let us see how does it differentiate with non-public procurement or say private procurement. So public procurement naturally is a procurement done on behalf of a public authority such as a government agency. But most important, public procurement, apart from being a transparent procedure, has to follow the applicable national policies. As I said, as you have seen, that all the procedures, amendments, etc., they come from the government directly, and one has to follow that. Then various government agencies and also press, media, and public keep a watch on public procurement. Not only that press or media or public keep a watch on public procurement. This is very auditable. You auditors of CAG, even the CBI, CVC, all these agencies have an eye on those things because what we are spending is public money. So naturally, we have to spend in the best possible manner, and therefore, so many agencies have a right to ask for details, ask for so many things, or to have an eye on them. But non-public procurement agencies, they also have procedure, as I said. Big or small private sector private companies, they all have a procedure for procurement. Nowhere you will find that there is no procedure for procurement because, see, it is procurement that consumes the major resource, money of any organization. But these non-public procurement agencies are not bound to follow the government procedure unless otherwise it becomes a national policy for everybody. If a government says that's a national policy to encourage Make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat, then even private companies cannot ignore it because they also stand to get lot many concessions from the government only by following government guidelines or national policy in that. But still, in a typical private company, they have their own procurement procedure, which may be very transparent, which may not be very transparent, which may be economic, which may not be economic. Whatever they want to do, they can do. But normally, in a professional private sector organization also, their procurement also happens to be very foolproof, procurement procedure, and they have a lot of transparency. They also have internal audits and so many things. So naturally, they also need very transparent procurement system. I will only say one thing, that in a typical manufacturing organization, I can always give you example of my own company, Steel Authority. You can just imagine the vastness of all these things, that from the fact that 40 to 60% expenditure of a company, of a manufacturing company, goes for procurement also. It may be surprising to some of you, but it's a fact. See, in the last financial year that ended on 31st March 21, this is in the public domain also now, that my company's sale showed a total expenditure of nearly 70,000 crores. 70,000 crores expenditure on all accounts, out of which the 60%, that means 42,000 crores, was only on procurement. And of course, this is public procurement because we happen to be the central government's enterprise. So you can understand the kind of stake involved in this, stake of the public. A company is spending 42,000 crores of rupees for buying services, works and materials, for running its own affairs and for producing results, profit. So you can understand how big is public procurement. Only in one company, I'm telling you, annually we buy worth rupees 40,000 crores. So that defines, that shows you the vastness of public procurement anywhere and everywhere. It's not only in India, in every country, in the world itself. Now, for public procurements, Supreme Court has also laid down some principles, and whatever we discussed till now, they all came from the ruling of Supreme Court. Some principles laid down with them many years ago. What they have said is that the government organizations are not allowed to work in secrecy. We have already discussed, we have said that you have to be very transparent, very transparent. So you can't work in secrecy in dealing with contracts. Bearing rare exemptions means where these exemptions are where some national security issues are involved. If the national security issues are involved, then only we may not be able to not maintain the secrecy. There, some secrecy has to be maintained, but this is very rare case. Otherwise, you are not supposed to work in secrecy. Another principle laid down by Supreme Court is that reasons for administrative decisions must be recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you are auditors. Whenever you go and audit in any organization, you only want records. You ask for the records. So naturally, we are supposed to maintain all the records. If you go there and see, there are hundreds of records maintained only on procurement, on stores, on inventory. Therefore, we are supposed to maintain records of those decisions which have been taken for procuring anything, service, works, or material. So this is the administrative decisions are based on facts or opinions of knowledgeable persons, again based on facts. So whatever be there, but we have got a hierarchy which does all these things. So naturally, the point is that, the punchline is that the decisions have to be recorded, then the record has to be maintained. Then third point you come, tendering process or public auction is the basic requirement for the award of any contract. Okay, auction is done while you are selling, but we are discussing procurement. So let's say tendering process. We will discuss it at a later stage. What is this? But tendering process has to be there, means there has to be fairness, there has to be competition, all those things, economy and transparency, which we have discussed, all those things come here. So while doing public procurement, it has to go through the route of tendering process. Of course, there are certain administrative decisions on this. And then adequate publicity is essential. Why publicity is essential? Is because we want all the likely tenderers to know about our procurement, a particular procurement. Therefore, publicity has to be given so that people know that it is being procured there, and if they are willing to give their tenders, they can give. This publicity nowadays is done through websites. Otherwise, it used to be done through newspapers, through different bulletins, journals, etc. They are being done through them also. But in addition to that, we have got now websites. This internet has done a wonderful kind of a thing here. Officers engaged in public procurement have to perform fiduciary duty. This is very, very, very important for a public procuring person. For a public servant like me, this was something which was there in my mind for entire 24 hours. You have a legal obligation to act in the best interest of its client. Fiduciary duty means I am doing it in such a manner that for those I am doing it, they should not feel cheated. They should not feel having let down because I have not followed the procedures or systems. They should not feel like that. They should feel that whatever I have done as a procuring authority is correct and transparent and reliable. Everything has to be like that. That is why a procuring authority has to perform fiduciary duty, legal obligation of a person or an entity to act in the best interest of its client. There has to be fair play in the actions of procurement. Already we have discussed transparency and fairness. Then bid evaluation has to be strictly in accordance with the bid evaluation criteria stated while inviting the bid. Obviously, you must have seen all these things there wherever you have gone, that there is a criteria fixed in every tender as to how the bid will be evaluated, and all the bids, means tenders, are evaluated accordingly only. So these are the principles laid down by Supreme Court, and these are the principles on which, they have formed the bedrock of development of different procedures on public procurement. Besides that, so based on this principles laid down by the Supreme Court, what is our take? Our take is that the fundamental approach adopted is that we have to go for open tendering, we have to go for effective advertisement, we have to ensure that there is non-discriminatory tender conditions and technical specifications. It has to be equal opportunity for everybody. Public tender opening, tender opening has to be done quite openly, transparently. Anybody can come and see. Award to most advantageous bidder. Advantageous is a word which is used here because we put some conditions in the tender. because we want a certain kind of quality in whatever we procure, whether it is service, works, or materials. So it has to suit to my advantage, but this has to be very, very transparent and known to everybody. Award to most advantageous bidder means, to me, the most advantageous bidder would be one who quotes the minimum price. L1, you might have heard the word L1, might have seen it happening every year. So we will give the order to L1 bidder. That is advantageous to me because I have to spend the minimum of money compared to all other vendors. So these are the fundamental approaches in public procurement as per Supreme Court's guidelines. Then let's say, what is existing legal and regulatory framework in India? We have seen what Supreme Court has given, how we have defined public procurement, and then now we will examine a bit on existing legal and regulatory framework in India that exists for public procurement. So we have got constitutional provisions, we have got legislative actions, we have got administrative things. Here, let's see what is constitutional provision. The Constitution of India, just a minute. The Constitution of India authorizes the central state governments to contract for goods and services in the name of the President of India or the governor of the state, and directs autonomy in public spending. See, in big contracts, not in every small contract, in big contracts, the tender paper or the part of the tender that is published in the newspaper, you might have seen that the starting words are like that we on behalf of President of India invite tender for such work or material procurement or something like that. So for central government agencies, whether it's directly central government or central public sector undertaking or whatever, which is governed directly by the central government, the President of India's name is taken. Whereas for the state and state entities, it is governor of the concerned state. So you will see, might have seen in the newspaper coming that on behalf of the governor of this state, we invite tenders from the people for this work, something like that. And then it also gives autonomy in public spending. I mean, President of India authorizes the central government agencies and the governor of the state authorizes the state government agencies to spend money, public money, and give some autonomy for spending. So this is constitutional provision, but it does not stipulate any procurement policies or procedures. Mind it. This constitution has not given any procurement policy or procedure. It is given by the administration, which from time to time gives. So this was the constitutional provision where the punchline is that for central government, this is President of India. For states, this is government of the state, which gives direct autonomy in public spending to the agencies under them. Then what is legislative provision? There is no comprehensive central legislation exclusively governing public procurement. This is very unfortunate, but this is a fact here. And that is why I have told you that Public Procurement Bill 2012 is still pending to be passed by the Parliament, is still pending to become a law. So there is no law on public procurement in India. There is no law. So there is no comprehensive central legislation exclusively governing public procurement. However, rules and policies of procurement are guided by very old central legislation such as the Contract Act of 1872, Sales of Goods Act 1930, and then later on Prevention of Corruption Act came, and then the Arbitration Conciliation Act of 1996. These are the sole treasure that we have to make our procurement procedure, to give authority to the people to buy, and so many things are there. Otherwise, there is no law on that. But since you might have seen here, the governor of the state has been given power for the state, while President of India has been gives the power to the central agencies. In certain states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Assam, and Rajasthan, they have enacted their state-specific legislation. For entire India, there is no such legislation, but in these states, they have enacted certain laws known as Tamil Nadu Transparency in Tenders Act, Karnataka Transparency in Public Procurement, Rajasthan Transparency in Public Procurement, and therefore they have got a foolproof procedure on that. A complete procedure for which from time to time, depending upon the situation, certain amendments also come, but those are the things which are followed in those states. So those states, wherever the public procurement is done, those processes have to be followed necessarily, but not for the country as a whole. Then comes the administrative guidelines. Now this is most important because whatever procurement is happening now under the public procurement, this is directly coming from administrative guidelines. There is no legislation. The constitution only provides certain things for President of India and governor of the state, but there is no procedure as such for the central entities. But for central entities, lot of administrative initiatives have been taken. So some guidelines are like this, that comprehensive administrative rules and directives on financial management and procedures for government procurement are contained in the general financial rules. I'm pretty sure each one of you have heard this. Each one of you must have heard this. General Financial Rules, GFR. This was initially implemented at the time of the independence of the country in 1947 and last modified in 2017. In fact, in 2019 and 20 also, there have been slight amendments which are affecting procurement. And those things are Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, all these things where certain preferences have been given to the Indian companies. The companies operating in India, the companies which are owned by the Indians. So some modifications, some amendments keep coming. But otherwise, this GFR dates back to 1947 and a major change was done in 2017. In fact, 2017, the major change was concerning Make in India. So all government purchases must strictly adhere to the principles outlined in the GFR, which includes specific rules on procurement of goods and services and contract management. So this is the administrative initiative has given us a procedure, but it does not mean that it has codified the procedure. It has only given a very broad guideline, but those broad guidelines are in place almost every place where the public procurement is done. This is derived basically from GFR. In 2017, the government issued the public procurement preference to Make in India order, which grants purchase preference to local suppliers based on certain conditions so as to promote manufacturing and production of goods and services in India. You might have heard these are very popular nowadays: Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, Startup India, or Stand Up India, Startup India. These are the political slogans, but they have been converted into GFR, and then they are the latest amendments or modifications which are being followed everywhere. You might have also heard about GEM, Government E-Marketplace. GEM purchases are being encouraged all over the country, and they have already taken a big shape in India. Now, for a certain amount, you have to only go to the GEM portal and buy from there. And most of the public entities are buying from there. So these all things are coming from the administrative guidelines. And administrative guidelines means, say, GFR. Let's say executive instructions or say administrative instructions are that GFR are compilation of rules and orders of Government of India to be followed by all while dealing with matters involving public finances. Naturally, public procurement is nothing but spending money, which comes under public finances. Then we have got some state GFRs, then delegation of financial powers rules, guidelines issued by the Central Vigilance Commission on this, guidelines issued by the Directorate General of Supply and Disposal, DGS&D. Now this DGS&D has given a lot of push and impetus to GEM, that Government E-Marketplace. Manuals on the procurement of goods, services and works issued by the Department of Expenditure, Ministry of Finance. Guidelines on procurement issued by individual ministries and departments and PSUs, public sector undertakings. And then, as I said, legislation on procurement enacted by some individual states like Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and Rajasthan. So these are all executive instructions which are to be taken into account while doing public procurement or while basically making procedures for public procurement. Every purchaser, purchase officer or whatever you say, he doesn't have to go through all these things. He doesn't have to keep all these things in mind. Based on all these things, a procedure has been made for him wherever he's working, and then he has to follow only that procedure. And his procedure has come from all these instructions. But as an auditor, it is always advisable that whenever you get time, try to go through general financial rules, and for yourself, you be very sure what you're going to audit conforms to GFRs. So GFR has got certain chapters on procurement. For example, Chapter 5 of GFR outlines the consent rules for the procurement of works, 6 outlines the rules for services, and 8 describes the contract management issue. So this all three combined, I mean works, services, contract management issue, then there is no need to tell anything about supplies of item. They are covered under these 5, 6, and 8. And there is some mention of supplies in some other chapters, but they are very well covered under these chapters. So if you have an opportunity, please go through the chapter 5, 6, and 8 of GFR, and it will give a good idea about how public procurement is done. Let's come to features of GFR. I mean, what they have given in the chapter 5, 6, and 8. So they have defined works, which is very, very important kind of a thing for you people. Everybody says what is work, what is goods, what is services. But the legal definition has been given in the GFR. What we understand from works, goods, and services, more or less the same thing is there in the GFR, but it gives a definition. But anyway, whatever you are auditing, that conforms to works, goods, and services. So GFR defines works, goods, and services to be procured and the scope of public procurement. It also outlines the fundamental principles of public procurement, like enhancing transparency and efficiency, instilling fair practice, which I have already discussed that in the light of Supreme Court ruling, Supreme Court's guidelines, and promotion of competition. Then it also describes different procurement methods and their applicability. This is very important. Different procurement methods means they have given certain price range, certain value in rupees. Up to this value, you can go for this method. Up to that value, you can go for that method. Very briefly, we'll touch upon this later. It prescribes code of integrity for the people who are involved in public procurement. All officers, all staff, the whole department, purchase department, has to follow code of integrity. Absolutely no deviation from it. It specifies tender award criteria. It's not in details, but the details are to be seen whenever you go for auditing. Then you can see the details in the files. Outlines general principles and rules of contract management. So these are the main features of GFR, from where the executive instructions have come, that those instructions have been compiled as procedures, and these are follows in government, in semi-government, in public sector undertakings, everywhere, wherever the public procurement is done. Well, can I ask a question right here? Somebody may unmute and tell me, is it going okay? Hello? Anybody unmute and just tell me?
Yes, sir.
Is it? Are you able to understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very nicely, sir.
नहीं आप yes sir बोल रहे हो, but really समझ रहे हो?
जी सर, बिल्कुल.
जी.
ठीक है. Unfortunately, the questions I have put for the last, so you just note down your questions. I mean, write down your questions, and you can ask questions towards the end. But unless otherwise, it is very necessary. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so it's very clear. Shall I go ahead?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next is, which we discussed, which was just referred, that financial thresholds have been given for enabling a purchaser to have some freedom, and freedom for meeting the purpose for which procurement is being made. GFR applies to all instances of procurement of goods required for use regardless of the value of the goods. However, monetary thresholds are involved in the following instances under the GFR. Let me ask one question, or in fact, you can also understand it's not a big question. Suppose as a public procurement authority, say you are a purchase officer of a particular department, and there is something which has to be bought. I say that yes, you buy 10 pens, one pen costing around say 20 rupees. So 10 pens means be 200 rupees. Now, for procurement, there is a very elaborate procedure over there. So many people have got delegation of power. If the delegation of power is beyond you, it goes to your higher up. If it is beyond him also, then he also sends the file to his higher up. And so forth, it goes up to everybody till the last competent authority who signs. It takes time, it takes effort, a lot of time is spent, lot of effort is taken, and lot of papers are involved, even if you have got everything digitally done. I mean, everywhere the digital operation is not there still, but even if there, a lot of work has to be done. For what? For buying pens worth rupees 200. And if you go to the market for your personal job, and if you say that you have taken 4 kinds of vegetables, just buy some potatoes, some onions, some other things, you see that you are spending 250 rupees within say half an hour or 1 hour. But for doing the same thing, you are spending maybe 15 days, 20 days or a month in the office because you are doing public procurement. So in order to save your time and all these things, and in order to understand, I mean, 200 rupees is only 200 rupees. You can't get a good lunch or dinner also in 200 rupees. So what GFR has allowed you, and on the basis of GFR, what many organizations have allowed you, they have put some threshold in terms of Indian rupees, to give you some freedom. That is what I want to say, some freedom from going through so many procedures, so many systems, and spending so much of time. So purchases of INR 250,000, Indian rupees 250,000, can be made at the discretion of the ministry or department by issuing purchase orders containing basic terms and conditions. Means, what happens, 250,000 is given up to that, but say even in Steel Authority of India Limited, which buys worth 42,000 crores of material every year, I'm telling you, we are having this power only up to 10,000 rupees. That up to 10,000 rupees, we may not have to issue very formal inquiries or quotations, something like that. We can simply ask our 3 registered suppliers to give quotations, and we will just open the quotation and see who is the lowest offering party, lowest price offering party, which is often called L1. And then we place the order on that. The government is giving a lot many freedom by saying that you can go up to 250,000 rupees. For that, no hassles, and the entire job may be completed within 3-4 days time, not even a week. So for this only, certain freedoms have been given. For works contracted value at 1 lakh to 10 lakh, the letter of acceptance will result in a binding contract. See, let's not go into those typical commercial details or legal terms, legal words. We can only say that GFR has given us some liberty through financial thresholds that reduces our time and effort for each procedure, and within which, and within that value, we can get the works, service, or material rather easily from the local market. You don't have to go a big invitation, big tender invitation in the open website or say newspaper or something like that. So this is what is meant by this particular, show, whatever is being shown on your screen. So this threshold continues that goods can be purchased without inviting bids up to 25,000 rupees. As I said, up to 10,000 rupees, it is there in my company. Government has given you up to 25,000 rupees. Or you just constitute a local purchase committee, 2-3 persons, and between 25,000 and 2,50,000, you can just ask that committee to follow some procedure and get the material. This is done only because just to save the time, and particularly in a manufacturing company like mine, the Steel Authority or any company you can take, which runs for entire 24 hours a day, 3 shifts. You can imagine what happens when a material is getting short. If this material does not exist in the premises, then the factory would be closed. And you can't, from here, sitting here, perhaps nobody can understand what will happen if the company is closed or the factory comes to a halt even for 2-3 hours. Huge losses there. So in order to avoid those kind of situations, certain extraordinary powers, certain extra procedures to cut the time has been given in every procurement, public procurement domain, big or small, where you can exercise the power up to 2,50,000 rupees just to meet certain emergencies. Although it is not written emergency, that is why it has become a rule or procedure everywhere that for value up to this, you can have a local purchase committee consisting of 2-3 persons and just do some formality for getting quotations. I mean, of course, you have to buy from the competent suppliers, but then no hassle, no delegation of power, nothing. Your files will not go up and down. It will all be done within a week's time, 2 days time, maybe 3 days time, something like that. So that is the meaning of financial thresholds given under GFR. A limited tender inquiry can be pursued for goods valued less than INR 25 lakhs. See, one more thing, let me tell you here that at 2:30 today, there is another class on public procurement procedure, procurement procedure in the government. That class also I am going to take. So the details of say limited tender or open tender or some tenders we will be discussing over there. Right now we are discussing only public procurement. Those are parts of public procurement and very big parts, no doubt about that, the cornerstone of public procurement, but the details would be discussed in that class. So I am just skipping it here, giving you what it is, and then I'm going to the next. Similarly, the financial thresholds for determining individual contract coverage, the same thing. Now, you might have heard the name of GEM, this government e-marketplace. There is a portal, GEM portal, very famous in India now, which is doing the business of maybe billions of rupees every year now. Around the time of my retirement in 2018, it had come. It came rather in 2017, but it became very important sometimes around 2018. And during that time also, I had to constitute a committee that will do purchasing through GEM. And at that point of time, the purchases were not much from GEM. But now I am told after 3 years or so that the purchase value in those companies have gone in multiple of crores, multi-crores. So you can imagine how important it has become. So this has become a system in itself, government e-marketplace. Basically, it's a platform. You might have heard the name of Amazon, Flipkart, Snapdeal. It is something like that, where the public procurement can be done, but for that certain rules are certainly there. So this threshold is given for GEM also, that for example, up to INR 50,000, you can buy it from any eligible supplier on GEM. That's a platform where suppliers and procurers, buyers, they meet. Buyers have their requirement and suppliers have their offers. So up to 50,000 rupees, you can buy from anybody as per your liking, not necessarily inviting 3 quotations and finding out L1. But for up to 3 lakhs, from 50,000 to 3 lakhs, eligible sellers having the lowest price of amongst at least 3 different manufacturers. So whatever is there, these are rules. Rules in the sense that up to 3 lakhs, you have to go for at least 3 quotations on GEM portal, and the person offering the lowest, you will have to buy from him only. For above 3 lakhs of rupees, above 30 lakhs rather, not 3 lakhs, 30 lakhs. The eligible suppliers may be 1, maybe 2, maybe 10. You have to give it to, opportunities to them. And you have to buy mandatorily from the lowest bidder. And that there has to be a competition among the bidders. This competition you might have heard, nowadays it is called online bidding or it is called reverse auction. Reverse auction means, suppose there are 3 bidders, their prices are opened on the screen. It's an online real-time function. No bidder knows about the price of others. The bidder knows only about his price. And then all the bidders are given opportunities to lower down their price. That is why it is called reverse their prices. If somebody has quoted 1 lakh of rupees, then he has to quote now less than 1 lakh rupees. And this bidding competition will go on because all 3 bidders will be quoting. So they will go on till the time 2 others stop quoting, and therefore the third one, who is L1, he gets the order. So this is called online bidding or reverse auction tool. So all these things are built up in the GEM portal, and the GEM portal is being used in public procurement very heavily, vastly. I mean, its use is very extensive nowadays. You have to rather tell why you are not buying through GEM. These questions are being asked by the auditors like you. So we are discussing public procurement legislations in India, the status in India. So other laws which have come of late and in this domain of public procurement, this Competition Act 2002. What is this? This penalizes anti-competitive activities such as bid rigging, collusive bidding, cartelization. What does it mean? It means if more than one parties, it happens many a time and in many places. I mean, this is a big headache for a purchaser like me, that I have to find out whether the parties are in collusion, they are forming a cartel or something like that. 3, 4 parties will come together, they form a cartel, everybody has got a stake within, and then what will happen? The L1 price will be very, very high. Very high. No other bidder will come down from that price. They will try simply to exploit us by coming together. So this Competition Act, which came in 2002, it's very, very effective in the sense that if any complaint about cartelization has come, and if you give it to Competition Committee, it is Competition Committee of India, CCI. Then CCI will go into the details, find out, and if it finds that yes, a party was doing it, then that party will be heavily penalized. Maybe the party's registration will be struck off. The party will not be allowed to compete in public procurements. Then Right to Information Act 2005, must have heard, and this in fact promotes transparency. From my experience, let me tell you that not a single quarter used to go, single quarter means 3 months forms a quarter. Not a single quarter used to go when I didn't have to reply 1 or 2 questions as per Right to Information. This RTI queries keep coming to us on how this party has got the award of the tender contract or order for the supply of items. All these things keep coming to us, and we have to go on giving replies that look, we have done like this, like this, like this. We have to attach so many papers from our files, photocopies, Xerox copies, in support of our contentions. So this Right to Information has, in a way, promoted transparency in a very big way in India. Very big way in India. It's a boon for the country. Boon for the country. Then comes Integrity Pact under the GFR and CBC guidelines. Integrity pact means, I mean, briefly I will touch upon this. Integrity pact means I have issued a tender where some technology is involved, and this technology is my technology. I have a patent over it. So I will ask that bidders, the parties, that you make the system according to this technology, yet do not divulge about the secrets of technology to anybody. Means you don't sell it to any other person. This is my technology. You cannot sell it. So the party has to sign an integrity pact with me that the party will not divulge all these things to any third party. It will be only and strictly between these two parties, one party being mine and the other party being that supplier, purchaser and supplier. So this is called integrity pact, which has to be signed at the time of placing the order or awarding a contract. Then is Prevention of Corruption Act in 1988, and you can understand what it means. It penalizes bribery and money laundering. Other ways also. These are not meant only for procurement, but they are used mostly for public procurement. Procurement is the only activity in India where most of the, not only in India, in the entire world, where most of the time it is seen that the different agencies have got their personal interest also. So naturally for public procurement, so many strict acts and I mean, a lot of surveillance has to be done. There's no alternative. And that is why all these acts, all these things, they have come into play and they are doing very good job. I mean, they have done a lot of things. And then who are the people, who are the agencies, which are the agencies which have got full authority to probe and even recommend for punishment of agencies involved in entire procurement operations. The first person is the purchase officer, the person who is authorized to buy on behalf of a company, behalf of government, behalf of whatever you say. And the second is supplier also who supplies. In between are some other people also. So these entities, these overseers we call, they are also playing a big role in seeing to it that the public procurement is very transparent, smooth, and without any corruption. So Central Vigilance Commission is doing this is tasked with increasing transparency and objectivity in public procurement. The Competition Commission of India, which we just discussed, and then you all know Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI. I don't have to explain it, and I don't have to explain you people. You are CAG. I mean, you are the auditors. You are also one of the overseers, and I will say you are the most powerful overseers towards public procurement, because I used to host you every year. Wherever I have been, you people used to come to me, because whenever I was head of the department in that organization, and then of course you did a lot of audits. You used to be there for a week, for 10 days, or 15 days. And you used to go through some 50, 100, 200 files. A big team used to come from your side. So you know all about it. So these are the overseers to public procurement. These are the agencies. Then we have got some weaknesses in the existing system. The system is weak because, as I said, we do not have any policy making department, because the bill has not been passed by the parliament. So naturally, we are not having any law on public procurement nationally. Then absence of legal framework. Naturally, if there's no law on that, there is no legal framework is there. Standard documents. Absence of standard documents means nation-wise there is no standard document. But different entities-wise, for example, I have given you so many examples from my own company. We have got very standard documents on this. But nationally, it is absent. I mean, because there is no legal framework. Once the legal framework comes into place, then maybe standard documents too will be devised, which will be applicable to entire all parts of the country. In every nook of the country, it will be used. This is not there. Nomination basis means in many procurements, we give the tender only to one party, saying that this party only can do. But this is not the correct thing. And this is one of the major reasons why CBC and CBI and you people, CAG people are after this. Limited number of suppliers, list of registered vendors. These are very small things, but they affect very seriously, because if the number is very limited of suppliers, then competition would not be that much, and the buyer would not be getting the best price, best value for the rupee he is spending. So many things. These are not big. Delay in tender processing. Yes, it happens. It does happen. Worst contract have got some weaknesses in that, because often the specifications are not very clear, and therefore a lot of changes take place during the execution of it. And negotiation. You know, CBC, when CBC came in 1998, the first thing CBC did was to ban price negotiation. In fact, they said negotiation is the major source of corruption. So they banned negotiation. And this became one of the most important criterion for us for devising our own procedures. And this is often called as a weakness in our system. Then what should we do? If those are the weaknesses, then what can be done in order to make the public procurement still better? So obviously we have to enact the public procurement law, which is pending. Institutional framework, preferably dedicated department unit with the Ministry of Finance. Well, I won't say that this is really required, because this is my opinion that in every place where procurement is a regular activity, they have got a dedicated department. They have got, and they are very professionally run also. But if they say that within the ministry, it should report to Ministry of Finance, this may have some positive value. I don't know right now. Standardization, including the procedures, tender documents, and general conditions of contract. These are also there in professionally managed companies, but in general, these lack. But if these things are done, then things will become still better. Competitive bidding should be the norm of procurement unless permitted and justified in special place. So obviously, competitive bidding has to be there. As I said, CBC first thing said that negotiation has to be banned. Second thing that CBC said was that you have to encourage competition. And third thing that CBC says is that you have to have complete transparent systems. So these things are the cornerstone, I would say, cornerstones of any good public procurement system. So naturally, these are utopian in nature and ideal in nature. So they must be there. And if these things are there, then naturally the public procurement will further improve. Of course, now we are talking about e-procurement. I mean, online kind of procurement, digitalized procurement. So this digitalized procurement will consume your less time, give more clarity, more transparency. These are the things. And these are the things, if these are things done, then public procurement will further improve in both in quality, in efficiency. Let's spend a few minutes on what is public procurement bill. Its objective was to make a legislation to regulate public procurement by all ministries and departments of the central government, central public sector enterprise, autonomous and statutory bodies controlled by the central government, and other procuring authorities. Obviously, once the law is passed, it will take, take into account each and everything that comes under public procurement. Since the law is not there, so many agencies are free to enact their own rules, own procedures, and although they are all governed by the GFR, yet there's a lot of variance. So we definitely need to have a legislation on this. We need to have public procurement law in India, which is not there. So its objective was to ensure transparency, fair and equitable treatment of bidders, Its objective was to maintain integrity and public confidence in public procurement process. All these things are done, no doubt about that, but a law is certainly required. So this is in detail of what really the bill contained. Not much of value right now because the parliament is just to pass that bill and yet to make it a law. But they had something which you can also, I mean, there's no harm in knowing it. They wanted this particular bill wants that procurement for the purpose of national security. This should be different from general procurement. Then a lot of discussion is going on public-private partnerships. So the law wants to address a procurement system for this particular thing where public money is spent along with the private effort.
Questions?
Hello?
Hello, welcome everybody.
Is it all right? Shall I go ahead? Procurement by central public sector enterprises. They want a uniform law, uniform procedure for all the CPSEs. All these central public sector enterprises should follow only one procedure. But after the CBC has come, this has happened too, already has happened, that all the central public sector enterprises have more or less the same procedure. Maybe a little bit of variation here and there. Exemptions from the law in certain circumstances, obviously, situations where national security is involved, there has to be certain exemptions. Everything cannot be transparent there. Key transparency and accountability norms, and then expeditious and streamlined grievance redressal procedure. So any law which is to be enacted has to have all these features, otherwise also. So these were the basic features. These are the basic features of the public procurement bill, which is yet to be passed by the parliament and yet to become a law in India. Now let me spend some time on what procurement audit checklist will be. And this is for you people. Whenever you come to audit me, you ask these questions. You look into all these things. I'll just read it out. There's no purpose in explaining it because you know it. Most of you must have experience of auditing procurement in different organizations. So what do you see and what you should be seeing? If you have not seen these things, then you should be seeing this. Whether the procurement plans and annual plans prepared and displayed, every organization where procurement is routine in the sense it's cyclic in nature. It has to go year after year. For example, in industry like Steel Authority, where 3 shifts are working for 365 days and steel is being produced. Naturally, procurement has to be there. Procurement is a very regular kind of activity. So we make an annual plan. So auditors ask this question, can you show me your procurement plans? Yes, we show them. Whether the procurements were made as per the procurement plan, yes, natural question. It's for you to check it. Whether the method adopted for procurement and all these steps as per the purchase policy were taken, naturally. What you see is first our purchase policy or say even purchase procedure. A copy of the purchase procedure is available with the auditors who come. They take the copy before coming and they go through the procedure very, very minutely and methodically. And then when they go through the files, they see whether those procedures have been followed in the files or not. This is the major lookout of auditors. So even if somebody is new in auditing, somebody is yet to go for auditing a procurement agency, procurement of any organization, then you must know that every organization has a procedure and you have to audit that procurement agency or procurement department on the basis of that procedure only. If you see that this procedure has some lacuna, then surely you are free to bring out that lacuna and report to the higher management that this is the lacuna, you have to address it. But otherwise, you are supposed to go through that procedure and audit the files audit the person only on the basis of the procedure which has been approved by the management of that organization. There should not be any deviation. And if there are deviation, this has to be recorded. So those are the lookouts of auditors. Whether the tender selection committee, evaluation committee was constituted and involved in the procurement procedure, of course, these are the part of the procedure which you have to see. Whether the overall procurement is done within reasonable time, plus your lookout. Every time I used to get a memo from you people that as per the program plan, this procurement was to be completed within 6 months. Within 6 months, the material should have been delivered. Then why it has taken more than a year? This is a question which you ask, and I have to reply. Every time I have to reply why this delay has taken place. So this is a lookout of the auditors. Then whether there was any avoidable delay, of course, it is coming from that point only. If there is an avoidable delay, you have to mention that as an auditor. And always you have to mention, always you are mentioning also. One question that you always ask where you want a management's reply is, this was avoidable, why it was not avoided? So we have to answer that question in a manner that we often prove that no, gentlemen, it was not avoidable. It happened not because things were in control. It happened only because things were little out of control. The market had changed. The supplier had stopped supplying. The supplier's premises, I mean, their machinery, their part, there was a strike in their premises that continued for months together. Therefore, there was a delay, something like that. It goes on. But this is a lookout of the auditors. Very much, no doubt about that. Whether the necessary approvals were taken from the appropriate authority wherever required, yes, it's about delegation of power. Everybody has got its own delegation of power, and normally nobody is allowed to cross his delegation of power. The delegation of power sets the financial limit for everybody, beyond which he has to give the file or he has to seek the approval of his higher authority who has got better delegation power or more delegation of power until it is approved by a person who has got all the power. Now, whether proper and adequate documents were maintained, whether the pre-qualification screening for the issue of tender documents was done properly, whether the technical and financial evaluation was done properly, all these things are your lookout. We will explain this procedure in the second half. So these are the questions I'm raising here. You have to keep it in mind. And most probably, since most of you might be quite experienced auditors over there, so you might have already seen all these things going on in any organization, in any procurement department. Whether the contracted firm supplied the goods or executed the work as per the quality, quantity, and price indicated in the contract agreement, all these things are your lookout. Whether the goods were supplied or works executed in time and properly recorded in measurement books and stock works registers after inspection, all these things are there, recorded, and those records are thoroughly checked by auditors. Let me tell you very frankly, I'm happy, very happy to say that some of the auditors like you pointed out to me personally, I was head of the department, some of those things which even during my entire career I had not seen. I mean, not garbad, not bad things, but and not even deviations, but something which really improved the functioning of my department. So therefore, they check the records very minutely, and my suggestion to you all is you check these records very, very minutely, because in these records only some hidden things may be there which you have to bring out and suggest to the management for improvement. That is the job of audit, no doubt about that. Then similarly, whether the payment was made to the supplier within the time frames. If not, then what was the reason? Yes, that is a big thing for us. After all, we are doing public procurement. Everything has to be transparent. Once the supplier has already fulfilled its obligations of supplying the material on time or completing the work or giving the service, and we have recorded that he has done it, then the next stage is to make the payment to the supplier as per the payment terms. Why there's a delay? Why should be there delay? So this is the question which is to be asked, and you are the best people to ask this question, and you ask also. People are asking this question. Whether the earnest money deposits and securities were returned within the time frames, yeah, big thing. You are asking this question. And if it is not being returned within the time frame, then what are the reasons? Why there is a delay? Why we have not given them on time? So lastly, let me sum up by saying that India's regulatory and institutional framework seek to ensure responsibility, accountability, and efficiency in the public procurement regime. The underlying principle is to procure materials or services of a specified quality at the most competitive prices in a transparent and non-arbitrary manner. I mean, in a very fair manner. So this sums up today's presentation on this. And now we have got another 15 minutes or so. If anybody has got a question, I'm here to answer, but one person at a time. Please go ahead. It's your time now.
सर ये इंटीग्रेटेड पैक नहीं समझ में आया सर।
देखो क्या है कि इंटीग्रिटी पैक्ट जो है, मान लो एक टेक्नोलॉजी मैंने डेवलप की है मेरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, और उस टेक्नोलॉजी के हिसाब से मैं एक सिस्टम बनाना चाह रहा हूं। टेक्नोलॉजी मैंने डेवलप की है, उसका पेटेंट मैंने लिया है, मैंने मेरा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने लिया है। अब उसको मैं जो उसका बनाना है, बनाने का माने है वो सिस्टम में स्टील लगेगा, उस सिस्टम में सीमेंट लगेगी, बालू लगेगा, सब कुछ लगेगा। तो उसके लिए तो मेरे को एक सप्लायर चाहिए, एक कॉन्ट्रैक्टर चाहिए जो मेरे डिजाइन पर काम कर सके। जब मैंने टेंडर को ओपन किया, तो टेंडर में ओपन करके मैं कहूंगा कि मुझे इस तरह का एक सिस्टम चाहिए, जो सप्लायर उसमें एलिजिबल है वो इंटरेस्ट शो करें अपना। सप्लायर आए तो मैंने अपना सिस्टम उन्हें बताया। नाउ एट दैट टाइम अगर सप्लायर को मान लो कि मैं अपनी कॉपी दे रहा हूं उस टेक्नोलॉजी की, डिजाइन एंड ड्राइंग्स वगैरह, तो वो सप्लायर तो उसे लेकर के कल को किसी मेरे कॉम्पिटिटर को वो टेक्नोलॉजी बेच भी सकता है, वो ड्राइंग्स उसको हैंड ओवर भी कर सकता है, वो कह भी सकता है कि भैया इतने में मैं बेचूंगा, तुम्हें इतने पैसे दे दो। तो मेरी टेक्नोलॉजी, मेरा पेटेंट जिससे मुझे अर्निंग करनी चाहिए थी अपने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए, वो उस सप्लायर ने मिसयूज कर दी। इसलिए एक स्टेज में, चाहे वो ऑर्डरिंग स्टेज हो, चाहे वो टेंडरिंग स्टेज हो, हम सप्लायर से एक नॉन जुडिशियल स्टैम्प पेपर पे एक इंटीग्रिटी पैक्ट लिखवाते हैं। उसका एक बहुत बड़ा पूरा रूल लॉ के हिसाब से वो मेरे वकील लिखते हैं, जो मेरा लॉ डिपार्टमेंट होता है उसका लिखा हुआ होता है, 2, 4, 10 पेज का होता है वो। तो वो इंटीग्रिटी पैक्ट का एक डॉक्यूमेंट तैयार होता है जिसको वो सप्लायर भी साइन करेगा और मैं भी साइन करूंगा, ये बोल करके कि इस टेक्नोलॉजी को सिर्फ तुम जानते हो मेरे सिवाय, तुम किसी और को इस टेक्नोलॉजी को अगर दोगे तो उस पे जो अकॉर्डिंग टू द लैंड ऑफ द लॉ जो पेनल्टी होगा वो तुम पर हम लगाएंगे। इनफैक्ट इंटीग्रिटी पैक्ट इतने सख्त होते हैं कि अगर किसी ने इसको वायलेट किया तो उस बंदे को 1 साल से ऊपर जेल भी हो सकती है, उसकी कंपनी का सारा बिजनेस रजिस्ट्रेशन कैंसिल हो जाएगा और वो बिल्कुल रोड पर आ जाएगा। तो दैट इज कॉल्ड इंटीग्रिटी पैक्ट। आप मेरी टेक्नोलॉजी को किसी दूसरे को बेच नहीं सकते हैं, मेरी सीक्रेसी मेरी है। दिस इंटीग्रिटी पैक्ट। हैव यू अंडरस्टूड?
ओके सर, ओके सर,
ठीक है,
ठीक है सर।
और नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन। एनी क्वेश्चन?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
हाँ,
Two envelope system is shown as weakness, no? Two envelope system is shown as weakness, no? What are the reasons for showing this in weakness? Two envelope system. Hello.
1 minute, let me come to that. वीकनेस ऑफ द सिस्टम आप बोल रहे हो?
टू एनवेलप सिस्टम है ना सर, टू एनवेलप सिस्टम इज शोन एज वीकनेस. टू एनवेलप सिस्टम.
See, क्या है? See, let me see, explain it. You are saying two envelope system.
Yes, sir. So how is this weakness in the existing system? Please explain, sir, this.
What is the meaning of two envelope system? Do you know that?
Yes, sir. At first, technical bid is opened, and after that, financial bid is opened.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. In one envelope will be techno-commercial conditions. You are right. Technical आप बोल रहे हैं, it's okay. Technical and commercial both. And the
Yes, sir.
another envelope, it will be price bid. Only price, nothing else.
Yes, sir.
It is often seen that though the price bid has not been opened, see, we encourage two envelope system, no doubt about that, because it is very convenient to us in the given situation. But it has been seen that even if a party, see, it is all only to protect corruption. Even if a party has not met with the techno-commercial criteria, we come to know that this party has given a low offer, something kind of thing. Some parties, they reveal in the techno-commercial decision, I'll correct it, but I have given a very low quotation. So just in order to put a biasness in the mind of the purchaser, this becomes a big weakness, big problem. So a better system is to go for three envelopes. Three in the sense, the first envelope contains only the eligibility criteria. I mean, are you eligible to participate in my tender or not? We fix the eligibility criteria very thoroughly after examining so many pros and cons. And if the person is not eligible, then it is a crime to entertain that person, that party further. So the party is rejected right there. Therefore, we have not opened this techno-commercial bid. Therefore, the party cannot tell that, look, thoda sa kami to reh gayi hai, some lacuna is there, but in the process, we will rectify it, and because I have given a very low bid. So that is one reason. I'm not saying that is the only reason, but that is one reason why we say that 3 is better than 2 and 2 is better than 1. And no, 1 is okay. 1 has got no mistake, because in one bid, you will find techno-commercial as well as price. If the party is techno-commercially rejected there, but the price is low, even then the party stands rejected, because what we are asking is not giving. So 1 is stronger than 2 and 3 is the strongest. That is why they say that two envelope system breeds little bit of inefficiency and at times even corruption.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of weakness. Am I clear?
Yeah, okay, sir. Please.
Okay, next question. Anybody? हिंदी में या अंग्रेजी में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, आप हिंदी में पूछ सकते हैं बिल्कुल आराम से, क्योंकि ट्रांसपेरेंट मेरी सारे जो पावर पॉइंट है ये इंग्लिश में होते हैं, इसलिए मुझे इंग्लिश में बोलना पड़ा, हिंदी में आप पूछिए, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। ऑफलाइन क्लासेस में मैं ज्यादा हिंदी में बात करता हूँ। Now tell me, have you people, any of you gone to audit the purchase department of any organization? Anybody who has gone and audited the purchase department? Hello? कोई भी आप में से परचेज डिपार्टमेंट को ऑडिट किया है, परचेज या स्टोर या इन्वेंट्री, इवन से मार्केटिंग?
हेलो पान साहब, नमस्कार।
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Dhan Prakash ji, you have any question for me? Mr. Dhan Prakash?
Yes,
Lakhera
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
कोई
Good day, sir.
Same to you.
सर मैं जो हूँ एम्स ऋषिकेश में एज ए चीफ फाइनेंस एंड चीफ अकाउंट्स अफसर था हूँ इससे पहले,
अच्छा.
और प्रोक्योरमेंट के केसेज हमने वहाँ पे देखे हैं.
हम्म.
तो अभी मैं जस्ट एक्चुअली आई वाज फॉरगेट कि मेरी ट्रेनिंग है आज. मैं कुछ हमारे प्रिंसिपल जी नए आए तो उनके साथ लग गया काम में.
अच्छा
तो
अच्छा.
जी सर, तो मैं अभी ये एकदम याद आया तो मैं तुरंत अभी आया हूँ. तो अभी
अच्छा.
मैं सर पूरा वो नहीं कर पाया हूँ अपने आप को फेमिलियर कि क्या क्या चल रहा था अभी तक. जस्ट मैंने केवल इतना सुना है कि आप कह रहे थे कि किसी ने ऑडिट किया है प्रोक्योरमेंट का. तो ऑडिट तो नहीं किया सर मैंने, लेकिन आई हैव पास सम फाइल्स रिलेटेड टू प्रोक्योरमेंट मेडिकल इक्विपमेंट्स.
अच्छा.
जी सर.
नहीं तो आपने अगर फाइलें देखी हैं तो इसके
जी.
माने कि आपने तो ऑडिटर की नजर से ही देखी होंगी.
यस 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 ऑफ कोर्स सर.
आप तो और भी आपके लोगों की नजर होती नहीं, आपकी तो नजर ऑडिटर की होती है.
जी जी
फुल
जी
स्टॉप और कॉमा तक से अपने माने निकाल लेते हैं आप तो.
जी जी
नहीं
जी
ठीक है, तो इसका ऐसा है धन प्रकाश जी कि सेकेंड हाफ में 2:30 बजे 2:30
जी
में
सर.
मेरा एक और क्लास है, एंड दिस
जी.
विल बी ऑन प्रोक्योरमेंट प्रोसीजर. तो
यस सर.
पब्लिक प्रोक्योरमेंट को तो जितना हो सकता है हम लोगों ने ट्रीट करने की कोशिश की अभी, लेकिन
जी.
उसमें अपन जाएंगे जब प्रोसीजर में, तब शायद
जी.
आप लोगों के बहुत से क्वेश्चंस आएंगे, तो आप जरूर अटेंड कीजिए, मेरा रिक्वेस्ट है.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सर, बिल्कुल.
2:30. हाँ
यस सर.
ठीक है. और भाई कोई और भी क्वेश्चन पूछना चाह रहे हैं? एनीबडी? मोस्ट
Yes,
वेलकम.
sir. I have a question. Can you just elaborate on the reverse bidding in the GEM portal? How is it done? Now you said that if there are 3 bidders, and each one is quoting 3 different rates, each one they will not be knowing the price of the other one, right? So how do they reduce the price?
नहीं नहीं, if there is an online bidding, fundamentally what is online bidding or reverse auction? In the bidding process, every bidder sees the price of the other bidder. He does
Okay.
not see the other bidder's name. He does not
Okay.
know who else
Okay.
are quoting, but
Okay,
prices are appearing on the screen. So he sees
Okay.
the price, and on the basis of that only he reduces his price. What happens
Okay.
is that many e-auction agencies, I mean reverse auction agencies like M Junction or C1 or Global e-auction, etc., what they do is that they fix a certain factor that whenever you have to reduce the price, you have to reduce by that factor alone.
Okay.
Let's say the total amount L1 party has quoted before the reverse auction starts, let's say 1 lakh rupees, just 1 lakh. Now, some parties have quoted more than 1 lakh also. So
Yeah.
our reverse auction will start from 1 lakh, which is L1.
Okay.
Now, parties have to quote below a 1 lakh. So the reverse auction authority, the person who is conducting reverse auction, it is often a third party agency, the third agency, that party will fix a factor, let's say a factor of 1,000 rupees. Every time you have to reduce a price, you will be reducing by rupees 1,000. So 1 lakh is appearing on the screen. Let's say there are 3 parties. 2 parties are saying they will see that 1 lakh is there. They will not see who has quoted. So what will happen if out of those 2 parties, one wants to come further, then he will reduce it by 1,000 rupees. So his quote will become 99,000 rupees. And this 99,000 rupees will now appear on the screen. So third party may like to quote below that and come down to 98,000, or the first party which quoted 1 lakh, he will like to quote now 98,000 rupees. I mean, he will like to reduce by 1,000 rupees. That is how it goes. So this bidding competition starts and it goes on. Sometimes maybe 1 lakh of L1 party ultimately became say 60,000 rupees, 70,000 rupees. The last L1 was 70,000 rupees on the screen. and he gets the order also. So that is what I want to say. In GEM portal or wherever portal or whatever portal, wherever reverse auction is done, the bidders don't know who is quoting, but they know what is being quoted. They know the price,
Right.
not the bidders. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it clear?
Yeah. Clear. And one more question is, say for example, now I think somewhere in 2004 or 6, there was some CVC guidelines that they have to whoever is purchasing something, they have to publish in their website. In addition to the existing instructions, that means earlier they used to publish in the local newspapers. So still that condition is there, or is it now only if you put it on your website, it will be suffice, or they have to publish in the local newspaper also?
See, nowadays what is happening is that you don't have to publish the entire tender on newspapers.
Okay.
You only have to give an abridged version of that. Abridged means very short, because getting an advertisement on the newspaper means you are incurring some expenditure, heavy expenditure at times. So, because it all depends on how much space you are taking in their advertisement page. So you take the minimum of space on their advertisement page by simply saying that we are pleased to invite a tender for this item. The detailed can be seen at this link, and then you give the link of your website. So both the things are happening. For seeing the details of the tender, one has to go to the link, to the website of that party or wherever the link is there. But that notice for that the tender has been issued is still going in the newspaper. I mean, there is no law.
Earlier they used to give it to the DA through the DAVP, the Director of Advertising and Visual Public. So is it mandatory still? I mean, they have to give the brief in the newspaper, or
not mandatory as per law.
okay.
The law clearly says, law means the CVC guidelines and other things clearly say that if anything has come on the internet, it is supposed to have come in the public domain. But still, people are doing this, that they publish a very small part in the newspaper, giving a link of the website, and then whosoever is interested in seeing the entire tender will go to that site through that link and see the entire tender. It is happening. There is no law on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it okay?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other question, please? Please, I'm not able to hear you. Any question, please? Any more?
I think, sir, there are no more questions. In that
So-
case, we wind up this session.
So, shall we presume that the session is over? Okay, thank you very much for your patient hearing. Let us meet again at 2:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.